Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Mark's Side of the Ring. I am your host, Miguel Minetti, and look who's back. I got my co-host back, Nick Fiorentino. What's up, bro?
Not much, man. Happy Halloween to everybody out there. I know this episode's airing on Halloween, fresh off later today, the episode with my wife and I and Sarah Karloff talking about Boris Karloff. So it's going to be a jam-packed Halloween with True Exact Radio podcasts. But we're here to talk wrestling. So what's up, dude? Let's get into it.
What's up, man? Look at that. You take a week off, coming back hard with the plug on your show. I know I'm excited to hear that episode, man. I heard it was a lot of fun. I know we were just talking offline about it, but like you mentioned, we're here to talk about wrestling, my friends. So we're coming in hot off a great pay-per-view, Hell in the Cell, 2020 edition of Hell in the Cell. So let's jump right on into things, man. Of course, first question I'm going to ask you is, what were your thoughts overall on the pay-per-view?
Overall, I thought the pay-per-view was actually pretty good. I mean, I thought the big matches delivered. I was okay with really the outcomes of all three. Like any WWE pay-per-view, there's a lot of filler and a lot of garbage in terms of the other matches on the card, but I thought the big three matches all delivered.
Good, yeah. I thought the same thing, too. And we'll kind of dissect some of the bigger matches here, but if you saw last week's episode, Fred and I, of course, had a little one-on-one to see who'd get more matches right. What did your scorecard look like after the pay-per-view was all said and done?
You know what? I don't know if I necessarily truly believe that Randy Orton was going to win. I guess maybe for selfish reasons, I was hoping that he wouldn't so that the feud would end, but it does look like the feud is going to continue just a little bit longer. I was ready for that feud to be over. I would say outside of that, every other match I kind of thought, I mean, I didn't really have an opinion on the Elias Jeff Hardy. I know you kind of went Jeff Hardy on that, if I remember correctly, but I was kind of more aligned with you on that, but I really didn't have an opinion one way or another. So I'd say overall, I think I did pretty well, but the main event I did not have correctly. I thought Drew McIntyre was going to win.
Yeah, I got the Jeff Hardy match wrong. I know that, so it looks like that feud might be continuing as well, too. But I want to dive right, obviously, into the biggest moment, in my opinion, of the night was the performance by Roman Reigns. And I know you and I talked a little bit about this as it was happening, but overall, man, and I know this has kind of been a reoccurring theme here on the show, but is it just me, or is Roman Reigns continuing to progress week over week in the sense where 2 months ago, when this feud maybe first started, when Roman first became a heel, we kind of had our doubts about it, right? They kind of shifted right into the cousin, the Samoan bloodline, family line storyline here, had our doubts about it. But has this guy not impressed you to no extent at this point?
Well, I have to start by saying that I was wrong about the entire storyline. I was not a believer going into it. I was pretty adamant that I thought the entire thing was not good because, let's face it, Jey Uso had never fought in a singles match before, had never had a singles feud before, so to think that he was going to jump in and win the title would have been foolish, which was the point I was trying to make, and I think we all agreed with that. But what we didn't agree with, or maybe we did think it was possible, but didn't realize that it was going to be this good. But I in 2020, Roman Reigns is the best thing in WWE right now, and I don't think it's close. I mean, this storyline is super compelling. I mean, it's got you hook, line, and sinker if you're a wrestling fan. I mean, you want to see what's happening next. This Roman Reigns character is on another level, and for selfish, maybe not for selfish reasons, but you wonder what would have happened when John Cena, was at his peak of getting booed if they had ever made him heel, just how good he could have been. And we never got to see that because WWE stuck to their guns and John Cena continued to be, the face of the franchise and went on to be John Cena. Roman Reigns, on the other hand, we got to see what would happen if and when we ever decided to turn him heel. And it's been amazing. I mean, it really has been entertaining stuff.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't think of a time where there's been a feud going on where you knew who was going to win, you knew who was going to go over and remain WWE champion or Universal champion, but yet be so emotionally invested of the story more so than the match itself, right? I mean, the match ended. It was the first match of the night, which, we can get into whether we thought that was the right call or not. It ended with the fact of his brother coming down to, again, try and save him. Roman being victorious, making Jey Uso saying, "I quit." Then, in my opinion, which was an awesome scene at the very end, to have his father and uncle, the Wild Samoans, standing on top of the ring to pretty much coordinate him as the true tribal chief of this clan. What did you think of that, with his dad and his uncle standing ringside or at the top of the ramp?
I thought it was great. And I think it all further, kind of pushes the story that I think we all know is going to happen. And that's that he's going to go one-on-one with The Rock. And, when that's at WrestleMania, I'm sure that's where they're saving it for. They just announced today 20,000 people allowed at the Super Bowl, which I think is big, big news for WrestleMania itself. That there's going to be people in attendance for WrestleMania if the Super Bowl is holding 20,000 people, and I think it's all for The Rock and Roman Reigns. I will mention, in terms of stories that were so compelling, even though we kind of knew the outcome, the only two things that popped into my head, and of course, these things come on the spot and we don't have time to research, but I think we all knew Shawn Michaels was going to retire Ric Flair, but the story itself was extremely compelling, and I would even go so far as to say, maybe to a lesser extent, but I think we all kind of knew that The Undertaker was going to retire Shawn Michaels. And that story going over a year long, really going decades long, if you want to tell the full Shawn Michaels Undertaker story. We knew what the outcome was going to be, but the story itself just really drew you in. But this is on another level because they're doing it, month in and month out. It's not just one match. I mean, it's an entire storyline that I think has just been an A-plus storyline.
I couldn't agree more, dude. It's just so captivating. Every week, I'm so excited to see what happens on, Friday Night SmackDown, whether we watch on Friday night or Saturday morning, what have you. It's, to me, SmackDown is head over heels the best show in wrestling right now, better than Raw. Raw sometime, and we'll talk about, obviously, we're leading into Monday Night Raw the next night after Hell in a Cell, but SmackDown just feels like such a clean show, and I think a huge part of that is Roman Reigns. Final question on this subject. Are you more excited to see the showdown between him and The Rock because of the storyline, or just as equal? Or I guess the other option is less, which I don't think is the answer.
No, I mean, I think that I don't necessarily think I was really excited for the match if Roman Reigns was a good guy and The Rock was a good guy. I think it would have been kind of another continuation of like the John Cena Rock feud. Something similar to that, just not interested. It would have closed the show and that would have made it even more infuriating. But I think the way that the storyline is heading now, I can't wait for the match. I mean, I really can. I mean, it's going to be super fun. And honestly, like I told you before, WWE is great when it's unpredictable. I don't necessarily, I mean, you would think Roman Reigns is going to win. It's better for business. I'm not putting my money on Roman Reigns against The Rock in WrestleMania. Are you?
No, honestly, I was thinking the same thing too. It's one of those matches where you're not sure who's going to win, and if the story's done right, I wouldn't be mad if The Rock won or Roman won the match.
No.
The lead-up goes to.
Huh.
I can easily see either one of them winning, but that's definitely a story I'm looking more and more forward to as we head to WrestleMania season. And yeah, I saw the Adam Schefter news too. That's awesome. 20,000 fans. God willing, I'm going to be one of those 20,000 fans. Maybe you too. I'm gonna have to convince Nick to see if he wants to take a ride down to Tampa between now and the end of March when WrestleMania occurs.
Never say never.
Never say never, my friend. I want to shift to the other side of things of Hell in a Cell, which was the main event we saw, which to me was pretty damn shocking. Randy Orton becoming a 14-time world champion, and of course tying Triple H's record, which is a terrible thing in itself. But what were your thoughts on Orton? I know you kind of said something a couple moments ago, but what do you think overall of Orton becoming world champion again?
My frustrations with the angle are nothing more than I was ready for the angle to be over, and now it looks like it's not going to be over. It's nothing against the storyline itself. I just thought the ambulance match and everything that kind of entailed there was a great ending to it. I thought the storyline kind of ran its course, and now we have Orton as the champion. I understand the people who think that Orton is boring or kind of vanilla. I kind of disagree when it comes to heel Orton. I think heel Orton is really, really good. I made mention to you earlier about this. When you look at, and to me it's just fascinating, but when you look at Hulk Hogan, when Hulk Hogan first won the heavyweight title against the Iron Sheik in 1984, and then you fast forward it all the way to 2002 when he beat your boyfriend for the title, that's an 18-year span where you saw Hulk Hogan in 1984 and you saw Hulk Hogan in 2002. Then you look at Randy Orton, who won his first title in 2004, beating the man who we do not speak of. And then fast forwarding to winning now is a 16-year span. And Orton looks like, yeah, he's gotten older, but like far and away different from how Hulk Hogan looked in 84 to 2002, which I just think is super fascinating. And honestly, when Randy Orton last lost the title, I thought that was it. I did not think we were going to see Randy Orton again in the title picture, and nothing against him. I just think it's time to move on. Every single wrestler gets their last title reign, and I thought that was it for him. And to see him back with the title now kind of tells me two things. First and foremost, it tells me, like I mentioned multiple times before, that the storyline's going to continue, and that's kind of a bummer. But the other thing it tells me is that Edge is getting healthy and that's going to be the title match in WrestleMania next year.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm looking forward to that match. I don't know about you, but I think Edge and Norton, besides Drew McIntyre, Edge was probably the second most person that got screwed over with COVID, right? His first huge comeback match, his first one-on-one singles match was supposed to be in front of 80,000 fans, ended up being in front of 0, as we knew. To only get hurt back in May, right? I think during Backlash, the greatest wrestling match ever. What better way to have his comeuppance than to have his triumphant return against Randy Orton this upcoming year, God willing, in front of at least 20,000 fans in Tampa Bay at Raymond James Stadium. So I'm looking forward to this feud. Do you think that McIntyre overall would you say he had a successful WWE Championship run? I mean, to be honest, or to be fair, I should say, obviously he didn't have one match in front of a live crowd, right? A real live crowd. So what would you give his overall title run from WrestleMania to this past Sunday on Hell in a Cell?
I think it's hard to give it a rating given the circumstances that we were in. If I had to give it a rating, I would give it a B with an asterisk on it, just saying it could have been an A. The fans could have rallied behind him and he could have become a bigger star, or they could have turned on him like they've done so many times before, and they could have booed him and he could have lost the title even faster. You'll never know what would have happened if fans were in the stands the entire time. You would have to think Brock Lesnar would have been, back in the picture with fans, big draws. And answer to your question, probably a B with an asterisk, but I think that overall, successful or unsuccessful, it was successful.
Yeah, I'd agree too. I really did enjoy his title run. Obviously, truth be told, it would have been probably a hell of a lot better if there was an audience involved, but that's neither here nor there. I guess the question is now looking forward, right? As we saw this past week on Monday Night Raw, it looks like the storyline is looking to continue with obviously a little bit of an added element to it. We saw The Fiend get involved between Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. And I don't know about you, but I really like the whole storyline of The Fiend kind of getting some retribution, right? No pun intended, for what Orton did to him a few years ago when he burned down his house, right? His woodshed. And during the Firefly Funhouse segment, they kind of showed reminiscence of what Randy Orton did a few years ago, which I thought was some really great storytelling, some foreshadowing of what was to happen later on in the show. But it looks like we're going to be heading to possibly a triple threat match between The Fiend, Drew McIntyre, and Randy Orton. But before we get there, what was really interesting, and obviously Survivor Series being the next show, and I want to kind of dive right into this, they showed that the main event, as of right now, the main event of Survivor Series is going to be Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton, and a champion versus champion, but a non-title match. My question to you is, what match do you want to see more? Are you excited to see Roman versus Randy, champion versus champion, or would you rather see the triple threat match for the WWE Championship on the line.
I would rather see the triple threat match with the title on the line. Here's the deal with Survivor Series, and I thought maybe we were past this, but clearly we're not. I don't believe I'm in the minority when I say this. I do not care about brand versus brand. I don't care. I don't think common fans know who's on whose show. I truly still don't necessarily know who's on whose show. When Randy Orton first won the title, it's funny you mentioned that. When Randy Orton first won the title, the first thing that popped into my head was, oh, God, please don't make it Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton. I do not want to watch that match. And it looks like that's where they're headed, so fucking WWE. No, I mean, just continue the storylines that you're continuing, further them along. No, you're wasting a pay-per-view. Back in the day, like Survivor Series, like the big Survivor Series, it was one of my favorite pay-per-views. I'd argue I loved it almost as much as the Royal Rumble. I just loved the captain, and the captains in it furthered storylines. It wasn't out of left field. This is a one-night storyline, brand versus brand, that will not continue past. It'll lead up to it. Nobody cares about the brand versus brand. It's just one of those things where it's just they're throwing away one of the big four pay-per-views on nonsense. I'd rather watch, if you want to do like the brand versus, or you want to do like the true Survivor Series matches, do them with the storylines. We don't need to see brand versus brand and every champion fights another champion. We just had a pay-per-view like that with champions all over the place. I don't need another one. So I'll get off my soapbox, but that, again, I don't feel like I am in the minority there in saying that. I just do not care about Raw versus SmackDown.
Yeah, honestly, I don't care about the brand supremacy type of match as well, too. It's funny, though. I was talking to a friend of mine who, Art, and I asked him because he is on the same page as you and I. He doesn't care about the brand supremacy, the 5-on-5 matches. But I don't know, he had a different take because he thought it was pretty interesting, and I guess I would somewhat agree with him. He is looking forward to the champions versus champions matches. He said he's always been a big fan of that, and I'm not going to say I'm the hugest fan of that, but sometimes, especially in the case of Roman versus Randy, I mean, it's only a match we've seen one time before. I think it took place in a throwaway feud in 2014 one time where they fought each other one-on-one, but it's been 6 years since the two of them took on each other one-on-one. And this time, of course, both of them are at the top of their game, right? You have a heel Roman Reigns, which is the best heel in wrestling. You have a heel Randy Orton, which honestly is probably the second or third best heel in wrestling, both as world champions. So you add a couple different wrinkles to this element here, right? A couple different layers now. You got both of them being world champions. You got both of them being a heel. So it doesn't feel like the match has ever happened before. So in that instance, in that case, I would say I don't mind seeing the match. Now, I agree with you in the sense that it's kind of a throwaway, and I would rather see Randy Orton do a triple threat match. If you'd ask me my opinion, I would rather see The Fiend, Drew McIntyre, and Randy Orton have a triple threat match for the WWE Championship and have Roman continue going down the path of maybe destroying his family or taking on the next challenger for the Universal Championship. But I'm not necessarily opposed to Randy Orton versus Orton. I think.
Here's the deal.
Go ahead.
To your point, sorry, I got choked up there for a minute. The match between Roman Reigns and Randy Orton, is there a title on the line?
No.
Right. So it's an exhibition. I do not care about exhibitions. It can only be one of two things. Randy Orton's not pinning Roman Reigns because that would make Roman Reigns not look strong. I don't think that Roman Reigns is going to pin Randy Orton clean. I think that if the match ends with a pinfall or submission, it doesn't end in a outright disqualification, that somebody's going to get involved from the outside. So why not just further that storyline along? So to my point, if Bray Wyatt is going to get involved in that match, because he's had history with both guys, they just make the match with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. I don't need for the title. I'd rather watch a title match than watch a match with his two guys as champions, because at the end of it, I'm not going to be like, oh, Randy Orton won, so he's the supreme champion, or Roman Reigns won, so he's the supreme champion. I'm just going to watch the match and say, okay, well, on to the next one. And to me, that's the reason why. I understand Art's point, and obviously Art being a big-time wrestling fan who we both know, I respect his opinions. But to me, I think he's looking at it with rose-colored glasses, trying to make the best of a situation that we all know is unavoidable. I think anybody, including Art, would say that they would rather see title matches versus exhibitions.
Yeah, I mean, if we probably asked him his opinion, I'm sure he would go lean that way as well too. But with the storylines happening, and obviously we only saw Raw so far as we're recording this, on Wednesday here. We saw Raw so far that they're kind of going in a new direction with the triple threat match. We've yet to see what's going to happen on Friday Night SmackDown. It's kind of interesting that they're continuing on with their different show storylines, but the match you're building to is Roman versus Randy Orton, right? So how long do you continue these stories? Do you take it all the way to TLC? I mean, I'm assuming that's where they're going, right, with this? That triple threat match will probably happen at TLC. So could it be more of a long-term build, right? Now you're looking at least 8 weeks out from tonight, from this week, right? 8 weeks to build to the TLC pay-per-view where you have that triple threat match on the Raw side of things for the WWE Championship. And on the SmackDown side of things, we have to see where Roman Reigns goes next, right? Who his next challenger be, whether it's continuing the storyline with the Usos or maybe moving on to a challenger. And I don't know if you said you heard last week's, right? But I mentioned Big E as a potential next opponent for Roman Reigns, which I think would be an awesome spotlight for it. I guess, I don't know, my question to myself and to you is, can they go 8 weeks and gain some more interest within the next 8 weeks on these two storylines here?
If they decide to do Randy Orton and The Fiend and get Drew McIntyre out of there, maybe Drew McIntyre feuds with The Miz and Morrison, which would be fine, then it would be okay. If Drew McIntyre isn't, so let's just play your fantasy booking for a second. If they go to TLC and that's the triple threat match between Drew McIntyre, The Fiend, and Randy Orton, now we're talking about a 6-month-long feud between Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. And I was done after 3. And I don't think I'm the only one. And I'm not saying it as it's just time to move on. So now we're going into 6 months of the same 2 guys wrestling. Enough is enough. I think it actually becomes a negative in the entire aspect of what they're trying to do. So it remains to be seen. I mean, we'll find out, won't we? But I'm pretty much over Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton, and I really don't want to watch exhibition matches. So we'll see what they end up doing.
If you're doing fantasy booking, where does Roman Reigns go next to you? Do you think there's still enough juice to continue the Uso storyline, or would you just cut it from there and have them fall in line and move on to the next challenger? And if so, who would you pick?
Well, who would he doesn't have anybody else to fight in terms of I guess he could fight Jimmy, but Jimmy and Jay are basically, the same guys. I don't mean to be, offensive in saying that, but the match isn't going to be much different. If Jimmy's in it, it's going to be, the third match, it's going to be very similar. There's nobody else that I could see kind of getting involved in the match, in terms of, other relatives. So I guess for me, I would enjoy Roman Reigns against Big E. I think we both have mentioned on here multiple times that we both think pretty highly of Big E. I know Seth Rollins is on the show, but he's a heel too. I don't know if, maybe after becoming the tribal chief of, his family, maybe he wants to be the dominant member of what the Shield was, but then you'd be bringing up a faction where one of the guys is on another, federation, so I don't necessarily know if they'd go that route. So I don't know. I'd say Big E. I would like to see Big E get a shot. We both think very highly of him.
I think he would look strong in defeat too, Big E, right? I think he's the type of wrestler where obviously he's looking to kind of kickstart his solo career, right? Since being with the New Day for the last 6 years or so. And I think it's also the type of opponent that gives Roman even more credibility, right? Because if he could destroy, but also make Big E look strong in defeat, this monster human being, I think it takes Roman to that next level here, right? Kind of catapults him to that next level to say, I'm going to beat anyone that comes in my way. And again, we're just kind of getting down to the path of the inevitable here, which is The Rock to come back. I was just thinking of something just now when you were talking. You think there's a possibility that Rikishi, the Usos' father, could maybe lace up the boots one more time against his nephew?
I don't think so. I think he will be involved I definitely think he will be involved in some capacity, but do I think that he is going to wrestle? I don't know. I don't think I necessarily want to see it. But while you were talking, I just thought of something. Is it possible for him to lose the title heading into the WrestleMania match? Because if it does become Roman Reigns against The Rock at WrestleMania, and Roman has the title and the match is for the title, does anybody think The Rock is going to win the title again? And if so, for how long does he win the title for? I don't know. You know, the last time he won the title, you know, he beat CM Punk, but he lost it 2 months later. Is it possible for him to win the title? And, you know, it's not possible, I don't think, for him to have a long run. So, of course, we're playing this all out in our heads right now and, you know, talking about it, but maybe Big E gets the upset win over Roman Reigns and starts a feud that way. I don't think Roman Reigns against The Rock needs the title, especially with the storyline going on right now. So, I don't know, man. There's a lot of avenues. There's a lot of things that they can do. And you also have The Miz involved on the other side. You know, you can't rule him out. Does he cash in on Randy Orton? If he doesn't, maybe he cashes in, you know, and gets involved in that storyline, and maybe him and Big E have a feud. There's a lot of things that can happen leading up to WrestleMania.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really great points. I think it's actually interesting to say that the fact that Roman versus Rock with the title could actually hinder the feud a little bit more than if they didn't have the belt, right? Because this match sells itself with or without the title match, or without the title on the line. And obviously, if you don't have the WWE Championship or the Universal Championship, on the line for this match, kind of puts more doubt as to who will win the match, right? Because to your point, if the match is for the title, The Rock's probably not going to win because he's probably not going to stick around and defend that title or that Universal Championship. So I want to kick back things over to Hell in a Cell, kind of looking back at the three matches that really were the only three matches anyone really gave a shit about, which were the three Cell matches. Did you think three ended up being overkill, or did they do enough where all three stood out in unique ways?
Well, I think Randy Orton, I don't know if you watched The Untold with Randy Orton and The Undertaker. I watched it today, actually. He made a comment about the Hell in a Cell match that he had with The Undertaker. And it was, there's been so many. How do you make this one different from every other one? And I think they did a pretty decent job of doing that. I don't think it was overkill having the three matches. I thought they all delivered in different ways. And I think that it was fine. The truth be told, the Hell in a Cell was not my favorite gimmick match. But I think they all pulled it off, and I think it was entertaining.
What do you think was the best of the night out of the three?
I think Sasha and Bayley was the best of the night. And it's nitpicking, but I like a microphone in an I Quit match. When I think of I Quit matches, I think of The Rock and Mankind. And I love the microphone in it. So if I had to nitpick that match, if I had to just drop it down not a letter grade, but maybe a marking from an A+ to an A, I think it's cool to have the microphone. That match was great. But even the ending, why quit? Just kick Roman right in the head. He'd release the hold. So I don't, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's for the storyline purposes, it was good. You know my feelings about Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. We've talked about it already. I loved Bayley and Sasha. I think the right person won. Does their feud continue? I'd like to see it. It's been going on for a long time, but I think it's very compelling. I would give the nod to that match.
Yeah, that was my favorite of the three. From a physical match standpoint, I think Roman and Uso had the best storyline of the night, but Sasha winning obviously was extra sweet for me because you know how much of a fan I am of hers. So the interesting part about that feud now, as Bayley has mentioned, I don't know if you saw on social media multiple times, is Sasha can win the big one, right? She's a multi-time women's world champion, I think 7 times altogether between Raw and SmackDown. But the story goes that she usually is never able to successfully defend the title. I don't know if you've seen her title reign lengths, but I believe her longest one is only like 2 months long. So I don't think she's held the belt consecutively more than 60 days. Do you think that's a story that they could kind of hone in on as Bayley kind of probably gets her rematch at Survivor Series, or maybe not Survivor Series. I'm sorry, she's facing Asuka, but maybe as we look forward to the TLC pay-per-view?
Yeah, I think that it's a storyline they can build off of, but in my opinion, Sasha will be the champion going into WrestleMania.
That's one match that I just, said that Sasha versus Asuka, right, at Survivor Series. I mean, that's probably one of the matches, champion versus champion. We just saw that match like 4 times, right? So, again, is that smart on WWE's booking to do a match that we've seen multiple times already this year? And, I get it, right? When COVID first started, nobody kind of knew what was going to happen. And Vince just kind of did whatever he felt was best. And we're going to talk about that being the case with Money in the Bank in a second as we move on to our next topic here. But, I mean, if we saw Sasha and Bayley happen between 3 or 4 times between May and September, is that really a match anyone wants to see again? Or should we pivot back to having Bayley, right, get her rematch clause against Sasha at Survivor Series for the SmackDown Women's Championship? Right?
Further the storylines and cancel the brand versus brand, in my opinion.
I wonder if I truly wonder if they have time still to just kind of nix that and pretend they never made those matches, and starting next week just kind of go with, oh, you know what, we're going to have our actual matches from the shows that our wrestlers are on.
Well, I mean, it's possible for the title versus title matches, but we've seen already some of the qualifying matches for the Raw versus SmackDown elimination match. And I do want to make one minor note. Sheamus taking out the King of the Bros himself, already predicted by myself that he would be a mid-carder and nothing more. Now losing to Sheamus in qualifying matches for the Survivor Series team. This man will not be on the card at all, which is, again, the second pay-per-view. He was not on SummerSlam. He will not be on Survivor Series. It's only a matter of time until the King of Bros is no more.
You're totally wrong about that, man. It was the best match of the night by far. If he was going to be jobbed out, he would have lost in 2 minutes to Sheamus.
He lost to Sheamus. That's a job. It doesn't matter if it was an Iron Man match, and it doesn't matter if it was a quickie. He lost to Sheamus. How does he lose to Sheamus, and you're making him out to be the future of the company? Big E beat Sheamus in like 5 minutes.
You know what? If we ever get Sheamus on the show, he's gonna hear you say that anyone that he beats means they got jobbed out. So
WWE said it. I didn't say it. Like Big E beat him in 5 minutes. You let Big E beat him in like 5 minutes. Absolutely destroy Sheamus. And yeah, they had a couple more matches after that, and they were really entertaining. And it's nothing against Sheamus, but in 2020, Sheamus isn't a main event guy. He's not winning the title again. I don't think anybody would think that. So, losing to Sheamus isn't a step in the right direction for Matt Riddle, I don't think.
I think the King of Bros will be just fine, bro. All right.
On NXT, where I don't have to worry about him anymore because I don't watch it.
Well, nevertheless, I want to tackle one more topic that I kind of just talked about and said that things probably changed since when they first started to think about things back in April and May, and that's the fact that The Miz has now become Mr. Money in the Bank and has taken Otis's briefcase. I'm going to ask you a few questions about it, but right off the bat, what do you think, not necessarily the match, in my opinion, was a throwaway, but what do you think of the creative of making Miz now Mr. Money in the Bank for the second time?
Heel Miz is pretty entertaining, and with John Morrison, he's reinvented himself again, similar to Jericho in reinventing himself and doing different things, and it always being pretty successful. If the plan was not for Otis to ever cash in, which I don't think we thought it was, we remembered speaking about the recap of the pay-per-view and talking about maybe he'll cash it in with the title, tag team titles. Because nobody really considered him to be, a main event player. I like what they did with the building a feud now with him and Tucker, but if he was never going to win and cash in, why let him win the match at all for shock value? I mean, I'd rather just watch a good match that ends and makes sense than for a shock value.
So that's exactly where I was going with this, and you heard me say this last week when Fred was on, but back in May, I truly believe that Vince was like, you know what? The world might be coming to an end. I have no idea when we're going to get back to things being any type of normalcy like they were prior to COVID. if we were ever going to have someone that nobody ever expected to win Money in the Bank, let it be Otis, right? Let Otis run with it. Let's see what he can do. And then we fast forward to, end of August, right, when WWE or Vince thought of the Thunderdome era and realized how much more of a success that would be. And it's pretty much as close as it gets to having a packed house in the arena. He said, you know what? This makes no sense. What the hell was I thinking? We need to get this Money in the Bank briefcase off of Otis and get it onto a more credible champion like The Miz. So, in my opinion, Miz is obviously that credible champion. The Money in the Bank briefcase makes a lot more sense on him than it does on Otis. And I think now, playing into the storyline, right, if Randy Orton can continue to hold that belt, especially past December, maybe leading into January, they're already starting to kind of foreshadow the story that The Miz cashed in almost 10 years to the day. Next month will be 10 years, right, that Miz cashed in on a Randy Orton. Roles are a little bit different this time. Miz is a heel, Orton's a heel, whereas 10 years ago, Miz was a heel and Orton was a face. I believe Orton was a face. But can Miz have a successful title run in 2020, you believe?
Yeah, I think he could. I think he can have a successful, because he's entertaining. So I think that he can have a successful title run. The real question is going to be, is he going to be the champion heading into WrestleMania? I think remains to be seen. And with him having the briefcase, it adds a layer to all of the matches and all the fantasy booking that we've done so far heading into WrestleMania of how things could just change like this. Does Edge and Randy Orton need the title? No, but it looks like they're heading that way. Does Roman Reigns and The Rock need the title? No, but it looks like they're heading that way. So where does The Miz factor in all of this? It's pretty interesting, but do I think that he can win the title, or do I think that he's a credible champion? For sure.
I think there's possibility that you get 4 strong main event matches if you somehow take the belt off of Roman and Randy, because they're both destined to fight someone that people want to see with or without a title on the line for those particular matches. And you could build up a storyline where you have the Universal Champion, whoever that may be, and the WWE Champion, whoever that may be, culminating to a successful feud at WrestleMania, right? Which would now give us 4 main events with Orton versus Edge, Roman versus The Rock, and then the WWE Championship match and the Universal Championship match. So while we're talking about this, I'm kind of just thinking right off the top of my head here, The Miz could cash in on Randy Orton and start a feud with whoever, maybe the Royal Rumble winner, hopefully there is a Royal Rumble. I believe there will be in January, right? And let's say a Raw person wins the Royal Rumble match. Now you have Miz, who just recently cashed in on Randy Orton, versus whoever the Raw or the Royal Rumble winner was, which I predict would probably be at this point would be a Raw superstar. Now you're talking The Miz versus a credible opponent for WrestleMania. But the question may be is, who is that credible opponent? Do we get finally after years, and this may be extremely wishful thinking, but a returning CM Punk challenging for the WWE Championship?
Never say never. I don't see CM Punk in there. CM Punk just celebrating a birthday yesterday, was answering fan questions, and one asked what's in store for CM Punk in 2021, and he said crazy shit. I don't think that crazy shit involves him back in WWE, but never say never.
Dude, nothing is crazier shit than him in a WWE ring. Right? I mean, after what he pulled in 2014 and what had happened to him, I mean, this would be the one guy I said would never compete in the WWE ring ever again. After all these guys in the past have left the company, been on bad terms with Vince, just to come back and have either one final match or one final moment. Punk was the one guy I never thought would happen. And now I'm starting to think there's a strong-ass possibility that we could see CM Punk in a wrestling ring, and we could see him as soon as WrestleMania in Tampa, Florida, in front of a capacity of 20,000 amazing screaming fans.
Capacity of 20,000. I'll say this for the NFL having less fans right now, they're pretty loud. 20,000 fans in Raymond James, if that's where they decide to go, is going to be pretty loud. They can make a lot of noise.
Yeah, and what's really cool about the NFL, right, is that they've been experimenting for this over the last month or so now, right, where they've had 25% capacity or whatever it is, 15-20% capacity, having some fans in there. I think they may be pumping in some noise, but it still sounds pretty authentic to me. And if obviously if things start to get better, God willing, by end of March, I mean, we could have maybe 30, 40,000 fans at WrestleMania, right? Never say never. So
Yep.
A lot of really great things to come. I want to tackle one more topic, our final topic here before we end the show for the night. And I don't think I got a chance to ask you this. Oh no, because we didn't do the show together last week. I didn't get a chance to ask you this. What do you think about AJ's new bodyguard? You like this guy? Do you think it adds a new layer to his kind of gimmick here?
Yeah, I do like it. It's reminiscent of bodyguards of the olden days. Even Diesel, Shawn Michaels. I mean, watching the match with him on Raw, and his bodyguard comes in, stands behind him as he does his little signature move, and the bodyguard just stands behind him, not blinking, not moving his mouth, not moving at all, is just an intimidating force. And I don't know if it's the way they held the camera, or what, or maybe he's just truly that big. But when he was coming down the entrance ramp, AJ Styles looked like a small boy. Compared to this, I believe whoever on the announce team referred to him as a skyscraper human being. The man is jacked. He's a monster. So, yeah, I do like it. It's old school booking, and I enjoy that kind of stuff. So it's good.
I think it adds a nice element to AJ Styles' story here, right? His gimmick here. I mean, the guy's always been able to talk. He's pound for pound probably the best wrestler in WWE right now, and has been since he came on board with the company. But he's never really had a bodyguard or somebody to complement his act. So I think it's pretty cool to see. I'm curious to see if this guy, you think this giant man ever gets physical, or do you think he, like, meaning in a one-on-one match, or do you think he just chucks some people around? Where do you have him with that?
Yeah, he'll eventually become a superstar. I mean, they all do, and Vince loves guys like that, the big size, the monster. He's probably a little too green right now for a one-on-one match, but he will be involved. He will be, a superstar of the future for sure. I don't know about like a main event superstar, but he's going to be a superstar at some point.
Have we fact-checked AJ Styles' height? Because he is a massive human being by making AJ Styles look like a little boy. And I think AJ is like at least 5'10", 5'11". He might be an inch or two shorter than me, but I mean, man, there is a massive size difference between these two. So
there is. And I do think AJ Styles is probably somewhere in the vicinity of 5'10", 5'11". He certainly looks like he is in that. I mean, he just looks like a common guy, He doesn't look like anything more than that. So I would agree, but it must have been the angle or the way, but there was just one video that they shot, and the guy looked like he was double the size of AJ Styles.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a nice act to add to AJ Styles' gimmick that we have here. So that's it for today, guys. And Nick, this has been a lot of fun kind of digesting Hell in a Cell and, doing some fantasy booking, looking forward to as we finally start to get somewhat more into a normal WrestleMania season. I know usually WrestleMania season kicks off at the Royal Rumble, but obviously with COVID being the way the world is today with COVID, we need to start planning ahead to see if WrestleMania is going to happen. And, I, for one, too, was very encouraged when I saw Adam Schefter's tweet about an hour or so before we did our show here that the Super Bowl is going to be held with some fans in attendance in Raymond James Stadium. So I look forward to see what's going to happen next in WWE storylines. Nick, I appreciate your time today. Before we sign off for today, though, I did want to give a special shout-out to True Exact Radio, getting over 1,500 followers on Instagram. That's a really, really great accomplishment. Scott and team there, you guys all do such a fantastic job. And, of course, for our listeners here, make sure you do give us a follow. You can find us on True Exact Radio on Instagram and on Twitter. You can certainly watch our show on YouTube, on Spotify, on the radio. The podcast app on iPhones, and however else you subscribe to your podcast here. I look forward to next week talking, my friend, and I'll see you shortly.
You got it. Again, happy Halloween to everybody. Thanks for another successful show, and we'll see what happens.
Yes, sir. Thanks, buddy. I'll see you soon.
You got it.